You know what's exhausting about vegetable gardening? Starting over every single year. March rolls around, you're ordering seeds, starting seedlings under lights, hardening them off, transplanting, staking, watering, babysitting. Then November comes, everything dies, and you have to do it all over again next spring. What if I told you there are 9 crops you can plant just once, one time, and they'll keep producing food for 10, 20, even 30 years with almost zero work? No replanting, no starting seeds indoors, no annual spring panic, just perennial vegetables that come back bigger and more productive every single year. I'm going to save you decades of replanting work and show you how to create a permanent food garden that feeds you year after year from a single planting effort. These aren't exotic, hard-to-find plants. These are proven crops that have been feeding families for generations. Welcome to Daily Garden Fix. If you're tired of replanting the same vegetables every spring, this video changes everything. Hit subscribe, and let's talk about planting once and harvesting forever. Crop number 1, asparagus, the 30-year payoff. The first perennial crop everyone needs is asparagus, and here's why. You plant it once, and it produces for 30 years or more. 30 years from one planting session. I planted my asparagus bed 9 years ago. It was work, I won't lie. I dug a trench about 8 inches deep, added compost, planted crowns, and covered them. It took me a Saturday afternoon. That first year, I didn't harvest anything. You have to let asparagus establish. The second year, I harvested lightly for 2 weeks. The third year, I harvested for 6 weeks. Now, in year 9, every spring from mid-April through early June, I harvest asparagus spears every single day. Fresh, tender asparagus that would cost $5, $8 per pound at the store. I'm getting pounds per week for 2 months, and all from that one afternoon of work 9 years ago. Why asparagus is essential? The return on investment is incredible. You work for a few hours once, and you get harvests for decades. Compare that to tomatoes you replant every single year. It's one of the earliest spring harvests. When nothing else is producing yet, asparagus is giving you fresh vegetables in April. That psychological boost of harvesting something after a long winter is huge. The flavor of fresh asparagus is incomparable. Store-bought asparagus is usually several days old and woody. Asparagus cut from your garden and cooked within an hour is sweet, tender, and completely different. Once established, it requires almost zero maintenance. I weed my asparagus bed maybe twice per year. I spread compost in fall. That's it. No watering after the first year, no pest control, no staking, nothing. How to plant asparagus. Plant crowns in early spring in a trench 8 inches deep. Space them 12 to 18 inches apart. Asparagus needs full sun and well-draining soil. Add compost to the planting trench. Cover crowns with 2 inches of soil initially, then gradually fill in the trench as spears emerge through the season. Water regularly the first year. After that, they're drought tolerant. Don't harvest the first year. Harvest lightly for 2 to 3 weeks the second year. From year 3 onward, harvest freely for 6 to 8 weeks in spring, stopping when spears get thin and weak. After harvest season, let the ferns grow tall. They photosynthesize and build energy for next year's harvest. Cut ferns down in late fall after they turn brown. Varieties to try. Jersey Night is all male and highly productive. Purple Passion has beautiful purple spears that are extra sweet. UC 157 is heat-tolerant for warmer climates. All will produce for decades. Plant asparagus once this spring and you'll still be harvesting in 2055. That's the definition of a permanent food source. Crop number 2. Rhubarb, the pie plant that never quits. The second perennial crop you need is rhubarb, the most low-maintenance food plant I've ever grown. Plant 1 crown and it'll feed you for 20-plus years. I planted 3 rhubarb crowns 8 years ago in a corner of my yard that gets morning sun and afternoon shade. I dug holes, added compost, planted the crowns, watered them in, and basically forgot about them. Those 3 plants are now massive. Each one is 4 feet across with thick stalks as big around as my thumb. Every spring from May, June through July, I harvest stalks for pies, jams, sauces, and crisps. I've made so much rhubarb jam, I give it away as gifts. And those plants just keep producing, bigger and better every year. Why rhubarb is essential? It's genuinely plant and forget. Rhubarb is one of the few crops that actually prefers neglect. It doesn't like fussing, doesn't need fertilizing, doesn't want constant attention. Just plant it and leave it alone. It's incredibly cold hardy. Rhubarb thrives in cold climates and actually needs cold winter temperatures to produce well. It's perfect for zones 3 to 7, where other perennials struggle. The harvest period is long. You can harvest stalks for 8 to 10 weeks in spring and early summer without harming the plant. That's 2 months of production from something you planted once. It multiplies. Every few years, you can divide established rhubarb clumps and create more plants for free. Those 3 plants I started with have given me 6 more plants through division. How to plant rhubarb. Plant crowns in early spring or fall in a location with full sun to part shade. Rhubarb tolerates shade better than most vegetables. Space plants 3 to 4 feet apart. They get big. Dig a large hole, add plenty of compost, plant the crown with the bud just above soil level, water well, mulch around the plant. Don't harvest the first year. Harvest lightly the second year. From year 3 onward, harvest freely for 8 to 10 weeks in spring, stopping by mid-July to let the plant build energy for next year. Remove flower stalks as they appear. You want the plant putting energy into stalk production, not flowers. Using rhubarb. Harvest stalks by pulling them from the base with a twisting motion. Never harvest more than half the plant at once. Only eat the stalks. The leaves are toxic. Rhubarb is incredibly versatile. Strawberry rhubarb pie, rhubarb crisp, rhubarb jam, rhubarb sauce, rhubarb compote. It's tart and needs sweetener, but that tang is what makes it special. 1 rhubarb plant produces enough stalks to make a dozen pies per year. 3 plants can supply your entire neighborhood. Plant it once, and you'll be making rhubarb desserts for the next 2 decades.
Crop number 3, walking onions, the onion that plants itself. The third perennial crop is walking onions, also called Egyptian onions or tree onions. These might be the strangest and most wonderful vegetables you've never heard of. I planted walking onions 6 years ago. I bought 10 bulbs online, planted them in fall, and by the following summer, they'd form these weird clusters of tiny bulbs on top of tall stalks. Those top bulbs got heavy, bent the stalks to the ground, touched soil, and rooted themselves, creating new plants. The onions literally walked across my garden bed. Now, 6 years later, I have hundreds of walking onion plants from those original 10 bulbs. I harvest green onions year-round, in spring, summer, fall, and even winter if the ground isn't frozen. They're the gift that keeps on giving and never stops multiplying. Why walking onions are essential. They're perpetual. You never replant them. They spread on their own, creating more plants every single year. Plant them once, and you have onions forever. You can harvest year-round. Unlike regular onions that are seasonal, walking onions give you green onions anytime the ground isn't frozen. Even in winter, I can dig through mulch and harvest during thaws. They're completely hands-off. No watering after establishment, no fertilizing, no pest control. They just grow. They're almost impossible to kill. The flavor is perfect. The greens taste like scallions with a slightly stronger onion flavor. The bulbs, both ground bulbs and top bulbs, are edible and have a sharp, pungent onion taste. How to plant walking onions. Plant bulbs in fall or early spring, 4 to 6 inches apart. They're not picky about location. Full sun to part shade, both work. Not fussy about soil as long as it drains. Plant the ground bulbs with the tip just showing above soil, or plant the top bulbs by pressing them into the soil. Water them in, then ignore them. In summer, flower stalks emerge topped with clusters of tiny bulbs. Let these stalks bend to the ground so bulbs can root and create new plants, or harvest the top bulbs for eating or planting elsewhere. Harvest green tops anytime by cutting with scissors, leaving 2 inches of growth. The plant regrows quickly. Dig ground bulbs as needed for cooking. The plants multiply faster than you can harvest them. Using walking onions. Use the green tops exactly like scallions, in salads, stir-fries, omelets, tacos, anywhere you'd use green onions. They're milder when young, stronger as they mature. The top bulbs can be pickled. They're small and perfectly pickle-sized with an intense onion flavor. The ground bulbs can be used like shallots in cooking. Start with 10 bulbs, and within 3 years, you'll have more onions than you know what to do with. They're the most generous perennial vegetable I've ever grown. Crop number 4, sorrel, the tangy green that never stops. The fourth perennial crop is sorrel, a lemony, tangy leafy green that most people have never tasted but absolutely should grow. I planted one sorrel plant 5 years ago, based on a recommendation from a chef friend. She said it's like salad greens with built-in lemon flavor. I was skeptical, but I planted one small plant in a partially shaded spot. That plant is now 2 feet across and produces more greens than my family can eat. From early April through November, 8 months of the year, I harvest handfuls of sorrel leaves for salads, soups, and sauces. It's one of the first greens available in spring and one of the last still growing in fall. Why sorrel is essential. The flavor is unique. Sorrel has this bright, lemony, slightly sour taste that wakes up boring salads. It's like having lemon juice growing in your garden. A few sorrel leaves transform ordinary lettuce into something special. It produces for 8 months. From early spring through late fall, sorrel keeps pushing out new leaves. Even after hard frosts, it often comes back. The growing season is incredibly long. It's shade tolerant. Most vegetables need full sun. Sorrel thrives in part shade, making it perfect for those tricky spots under trees or on the north side of buildings where nothing else grows. One plant is enough. Sorrel is productive. One plant feeds my family of 4 with leaves to spare. You don't need multiple plants unless you want to share or preserve. How to plant sorrel. Plant in spring or fall in part shade to full sun. Sorrel tolerates a range of conditions, but prefers afternoon shade in hot climates. Soil should be moist and rich. Amend with compost before planting. Space plants 12 to 18 inches apart if planting multiple. Water regularly until established, then occasionally during dry spells. Sorrel appreciates consistent moisture. Harvest outer leaves when they're 3 to 6 inches long, leaving the center to keep producing. The more you harvest, the more it produces. Remove flower stalks as they appear to keep the plant focused on leaf production. Cut plants back hard in midsummer if they start looking tired. They'll rebound with fresh growth in a few weeks. Using sorrel. Young, small leaves are mild and perfect for fresh salads. Older, larger leaves are more tart and better cooked. Sorrel breaks down quickly when heated, creating a lemony sauce. Classic sorrel soup is creamy, bright green, and tangy. It tastes like springtime. Sorrel also works beautifully in omelets, quiches, and pasta dishes. Anywhere you'd add lemon, consider adding sorrel instead. One sorrel plant, planted once, gives you 8 months of harvests every year for a decade or more. That's thousands of salads from one $5 plant. Crop number 5, Jerusalem artichoke, the underground powerhouse. The 5th perennial crop is Jerusalem artichoke, also called sunchoke. This is a plant that produces edible tubers underground and spreads so enthusiastically you'll never run out. I planted 5 Jerusalem artichoke tubers 7 years ago in a corner of my garden. That first fall, I dug up 30 tubers from those 5 plants. I ate some, replanted some, and gave some away. The next year, I had even more. Now, 7 years later, I have a permanent patch that produces buckets of tubers every fall. The funny thing is, I barely tend this patch. I water it maybe twice a summer during extreme drought. I never fertilize it. It just grows, spreads, and produces food year after year. Why Jerusalem artichoke are essential. It's incredibly productive. One tuber planted becomes a plant that produces 10 to 20 tubers. Those tubers, if left in the ground, become more plants next year. The multiplication factor is exponential. It's nearly indestructible. Jerusalem artichokes grow in poor soil, handle drought, tolerate shade, and have no serious pest problems. They grow where other vegetables fail. You can harvest year-round. Tubers store perfectly in the ground through winter. Dig them as needed from fall through spring. They're nature's root cellar. The plants are beautiful. Jerusalem artichokes grow 6 to 10 feet tall with bright yellow sunflower-like blooms in late summer. They work as ornamental screens or privacy barriers. How to plant Jerusalem artichoke. Plant tubers in early spring, 4 to 6 inches deep, 12 to 18 inches apart. They're not picky about location, but appreciate full sun. They tolerate any soil type. Water occasionally the first year. After that, they need nothing. They'll spread slowly through underground tubers, so plant them where spreading is acceptable or use barriers. Let plants grow all season. They'll reach 6 to 10 feet tall. After frost kills the tops, cut stalks to the ground. Wait 2 weeks, then start harvesting tubers by digging around plants. Leave some tubers in the ground for next year's crop. They'll regrow come spring. Using Jerusalem artichoke. The tubers taste like nutty, sweet potatoes with a hint of artichoke flavor. They're crunchy raw, creamy when cooked. Roast them, mash them, make soup, slice them thin for chips. One warning, they contain inulin, a prebiotic fiber that some people find causes digestive gas. Start with small amounts. Many people build tolerance over time. But the payoff is huge. Plant 5 tubers once, and you'll harvest 50 tubers this year, 200 next year, and have an endless supply forever. It's exponential food production from minimal effort.
Crop number 6, horseradish, the condiment that never dies. The 6th perennial crop is horseradish, the spicy root that adds serious kick to sauces and roast beef, and it's genuinely impossible to kill once planted. I planted one horseradish root 6 years ago in a corner of my garden. That first fall, I dug it up to harvest. I took half the root for grading and replanted the other half. The next year, it grew even bigger. Now, 6 years later, I have a permanent horseradish patch that produces more roots than I can use. Here's the thing about horseradish. It's aggressive. It spreads through underground roots. Some people consider it invasive. But if you want a permanent source of fresh horseradish without replanting, that aggressiveness is actually a feature, not a bug. Why horseradish is essential? Fresh horseradish is incomparably better than store-bought. The flavor is bright, sharp, and clean. None of that vinegary, dull taste of jarred horseradish. Once you've had fresh, you'll never go back. It's indestructible. Horseradish tolerates terrible soil, deep shade, neglect, and brutal cold. It survives Zone 3 winters and Zone 9 heat. You cannot kill it. One plant is enough. Horseradish is potent. A little goes a long way. One plant produces more than a family needs, with plenty to share. It's perennial without trying. You don't have to do anything for it to come back year after year. In fact, you have to actively work to get rid of it if you change your mind. It's that permanent. How to plant horseradish? Plant root cuttings in early spring, 12 to 18 inches apart, in a spot where spreading is acceptable. Or plant in a large container to contain the roots. Full sun to part shade works. Bury roots at a 45-degree angle, 3 to 4 inches deep, with the top just below soil level. Water occasionally the first season. After that, ignore it. It'll grow regardless. Let plants grow all season. Dig roots in fall after frost kills the tops. Harvest what you need, replant some roots for next year. The plant regrows from any root fragments left in the soil. Using horseradish, dig roots in fall, peel and grate them. Do this outside or in the ventilated area because the fumes are intense, like onions times 10. Mix grated horseradish with vinegar and a pinch of salt. It'll keep in the fridge for months. Fresh horseradish sauce is incredible with roast beef, prime rib, smoked fish, or mixed into cocktail sauce for shrimp. The flavor is clean and fiery. Plant one root once and you'll have horseradish forever. It's the most permanent perennial crop I've ever grown, whether you like it or not. Crop number 7, garlic chives, the flavor bomb that reseeds itself. The 7th perennial crop is garlic chives. Not regular chives, but garlic-flavored chives that are even easier to grow and more flavorful. I planted garlic chives 8 years ago from a single plant I got at a farmer's market.
That one plant has now become dozens scattered throughout my garden because garlic chives self-seed enthusiastically. I have garlic chives popping up in borders, along paths, in the vegetable garden, everywhere. And I love it. I harvest them constantly from spring through fall. I snip them into scrambled eggs, stir fries, salads, soups, anywhere I want mild garlic flavor without having to peel and chop actual garlic. Why garlic chives are essential? The flavor is perfect. They taste like mild garlic and onion combined. Garlicky but not overwhelming. They add flavor to anything without dominating the dish. They're available for months. From spring to fall, you can harvest garlic chives continuously. Cut them back and they regrow within 2 weeks. They're one of the longest producing herbs. They self-seed and multiply. One plant becomes many through division and self-seeding. Within a few years, you'll have garlic chives available in multiple spots in your garden. The flowers are edible and beautiful. In late summer, garlic chives produce white star-shaped flowers that are edible and attract beneficial insects. They're both ornamental and functional. How to plant garlic chives? Plant in spring or fall, in full sun to part shade. They're not picky about soil or location. Space plants 8 to 12 inches apart, though they'll fill in over time. Water regularly the first season. After that, they're drought tolerant. They'll even tolerate neglect and poor soil. Harvest by cutting leaves with scissors, leaving 2 inches of growth. They'll regrow quickly. Harvest flowers when they appear for eating or deadhead them to prevent excessive self-seeding. Divide clumps every few years to keep them vigorous, or let them naturalize and spread on their own. Using garlic chives, snip fresh leaves into any dish where you'd use chives or garlic. They're perfect in eggs, potato dishes, salads, cream cheese, butter, dressings, and Asian stir-fries. The flower buds are edible and delicious, slightly crunchy with concentrated garlic flavor. Use them in stir-fries right before serving. Garlic chives also freeze well. Chop them, freeze in ice cube trays with water or oil, and you have garlic flavor available all winter. One plant, planted once, gives you years of garlic-flavored goodness with zero maintenance. They're the easiest herb I've ever grown. Crop number 8, strawberries, the berry that returns every spring. The 8th perennial crop is strawberries. And yes, strawberries are perennial. Plant them once and they'll produce fruit for 3 to 5 years before you need to renovate the bed. I planted 25 strawberry plants 9 years ago. That first year, I got a small harvest. The second year, the plants had filled in and I picked berries every day for 3 weeks. By year 3, I was picking buckets, literally gallons of strawberries. After 5 years, production declined, so I renovated the bed by dividing runners and replanting. Now I'm back to heavy production. The point is, those original 25 plants have given me 9 years of strawberry harvests without replanting from seed or buying new plants annually. Why strawberries are essential? Fresh strawberries from the garden are incomparable. Store-bought berries are picked underripe and shipped long distances. Garden strawberries are picked fully ripe, still warm from the sun, and taste like concentrated summer. One planting gives you multiple years. Unlike annual vegetables you replant every spring, strawberries come back year after year. You do the work once and harvest for years. They're adaptable. They grow in the ground, in raised beds, in containers, even in hanging baskets. They work in small spaces and large gardens equally.
How to plant strawberries. Plant in early spring or fall in full sun. Strawberries need at least 6 to 8 hours of sunlight for good fruit production. Space plants 12 inches apart in rows or beds. Prepare soil with plenty of compost. Strawberries like rich, well-draining soil. Plant crowns at the correct depth. Too shallow and they dry out. Too deep and they rot. Water regularly, especially during fruit formation. Mulch around plants with straw to keep fruit clean and suppress weeds. Let runners establish to fill in the bed or cut them off to keep plants in designated spots. After 3 to 5 years, renovate the bed by removing old plants and replanting young runner plants. Varieties to choose. June-bearing varieties produce one large crop in June. Great for preserving. Ever-bearing varieties produce smaller crops in spring and fall. Day-neutral varieties produce steadily from spring through fall in cooler climates.
All-Star is reliable and disease-resistant. Seascape is day-neutral with excellent flavor. Chandler is June-bearing with huge berries. All are perennial. Using strawberries. Eat them fresh, obviously. Make jam, freeze them for smoothies, bake them in pies and shortcakes, dry them for snacks. One good harvest gives you enough berries for all of these uses. 25 plants can produce 30 to 50 pounds of berries per year at peak production. That's a lot of jam and pie. And it all comes from one planting session and minimal ongoing care. Crop number 9, Lovage, 1630 to 1815. The celery that never needs replanting. The 9th and final perennial crop is Lovage, an herb that tastes like intense celery and grows like an absolute weed once established. I planted one Lovage plant 7 years ago in a partially shaded corner. That plant is now 6 feet tall and 3 feet across. From spring through fall, I harvest leaves for soups, stews, salads, and anywhere I'd use celery. One plant produces more leaves than I can use, so I dry bunches for winter cooking. Lovage is one of those herbs nobody knows about, but once you grow it, you wonder how you ever cooked without it. Why lovage is essential. It tastes like celery without the work of growing celery. Regular celery is fussy. It needs rich soil, constant water, and still often fails. Lovage grows like a weed and produces celery flavor for years from one planting. One plant is enough. Lovage is incredibly productive. One mature plant gives you more celery flavor than a family can use. You don't need multiples. It's available for months. From spring through fall, you can harvest lovage leaves continuously. It's one of the first herbs up in spring and one of the last still producing in fall. It's bulletproof. Lovage tolerates shade, poor soil, drought, cold, heat, and neglect. It's nearly impossible to kill. Plant it and forget it. How to plant lovage. Plant in spring or fall in part shade to full sun. Lovage appreciates afternoon shade in hot climates. Space plants 2 to 3 feet apart. They get big. Soil should be reasonably fertile and moist, but not waterlogged. Amend with compost before planting. Water regularly the first season. After that, lovage is drought tolerant. Harvest leaves as needed by cutting stems near the base. The plant will keep producing. Remove flower stalks if they appear to keep the plant focused on leaf production, or let them flower if you want seeds for cooking. Lovage seeds have an intense celery flavor and work like celery seed in recipes. Cut plants back in late fall after frost kills the tops. They'll regrow from the roots in spring. Using lovage? Use leaves anywhere you'd use celery. Soups, stews, stocks, salads. The flavor is more intense than celery, so start with less. 1 or 2 lovage leaves replaces a stalk of celery in recipes. Lovage stems can be blanched and eaten like celery, though they're usually tougher. Younger stems are more tender. The seeds can be dried and used as a seasoning. Lovage tea is traditional for digestion. The roots are edible, but rarely used. One lovage plant, planted once, gives you decades of celery flavor without annual replanting. It's the ultimate low-maintenance herb. There they are, 9 crops you plant once and harvest for years or even decades. Asparagus for 30 years, rhubarb for 20, walking onions forever through self-propagation, sorrel, Jerusalem artichoke, horseradish, garlic chives, strawberries, and lovage, all planted once, all producing for years. Think about what this means. One intensive planting session, maybe a weekend of work, sets you up with food production for decades. Compare that to annual vegetables where you start from scratch every single spring. I'm not saying don't grow tomatoes and cucumbers. I grow those too, but building a foundation of perennial crops transforms your garden from an annual chore into a permanent food system. Which of these 9 perennial crops are you going to plant first? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing what excites you. If this video opened your eyes to permanent food gardening, hit that like button and share it with someone who's tired of replanting vegetables every single year. Subscribe to Daily Garden Fix for more practical growing strategies that save time and maximize harvests. Until next time, keep growing, keep learning, and remember, the best crops are the ones who plant once and harvest forever. Happy planting, friends!